this computer. Boom. Okay, so welcome to today's call. Today is going to be on the subject of reducing bloating first, then losing body fat. Okay, so I am Coach Peter of Breadcaster Fitness. So I've been in the industry for over 12 years as a personal trainer. I have a kinesiology background with a Bachelor of Science and a nutrition minor. And over the course of time, I've helped over 250 individuals get to their fitness goals. And just looking at my body over here on the right, I've been through different stages of my life where I've been really strong, but let's just say not so satisfied with how I looked in the mirror. I've been in a place where I was very well-rounded. I had strength, but I also had flexibility. I also had some cardio endurance. And I also been in a place where my fitness was incredibly high, and it was a lot of fun. I felt like a feather, and it was just one of those years where I felt younger than I felt ever. However, it was something that was, let's just say, it took a lot of time in the gym, and then I realized that there is a specific balance that works for my lifestyle, and that's what the whole point of getting to your fitness goals is. It has to be a way where you could live this lifestyle, and it's not something that you could ever lose. So this is where I'm at now. I'm kind of floating between these two images over here. And it's at a point where I could eat the food that I want and not worry too much about gaining weight. And if I gain weight by a smidge, I know that I can go back down, and vice versa. If I end up losing too much weight, it's easy to get back to where I want to be. So that's the ultimate goal of this program. Get to the point where you are the most confident version of yourself. So let me just full screen this so that we have a better view. All right. So today's topic, again, is going to be on bloating. So you must reduce your bloating first in order to lose body fat. And we're going to talk about why. So in the first subject, we're going to talk about what causes bloating, what is bloating, and what causes bloating. We're going to talk about the relationship between your breathing and bloating. We're also going to talk about the way to manage your stress and how that leads to reducing your bloating. And then we're going to come back to the idea of why you need to reduce your bloating in order to lose fat. So this is what you're going to learn in today's call. So what is bloating? Bloating, we've seen it in the mirror. We know what it feels like, but let's make it more concrete. So bloating is characterized by an increased waist to hip ratio or an improved waistline. Bloating, what does it feel like? It feels like, you could have brain fog, you could have constipation, you feel full, but you're hungry all the time. And often you can feel like you're lacking energy, but really you have an abundance of energy because you have tons of calories in your body. It's just that our bodies aren't effectively metabolizing it. So the problem with bloating is that a lot of the blood is sitting by the core, and it ends up elevating your risk for long-term diseases such as stroke, diabetes, cancer, heart disease, dementia, and also metabolic syndrome. And this is essentially meaning that your blood circulation is very poor and you don't have a strong immune system because you lack oxygen in the body. So what is the main cause of bloating? It's stress. And it's very general stress, any sort of stress, physical stress, chemical stress, and emotional stress can all lead to bloating. So today, we're just going to be talking about physical stress and also emotional stress. When it comes to chemical stress, we all know that having, habits such as smoking or any sort of eating a lot of junk food. We'll talk about junk food today, but eating things that aren't natural, things that are organic and probably not good for your genetics, that's going to create toxicity in your body, and that's what causes bloating. So if we talk about physical stress, let's make it visual. If you lack flexibility and mobility, so I just want you to imagine this image here as your human body. And if you had tight hips and you had tight shoulders, the heart is supposed to pump fresh blood, right? The oxygenated blood that comes from the lungs. And then it's supposed to circulate it to your fingertips and your toes. So if you get a paper cut at your fingertips, you'd expect there to be blood. If you also get a cut around your toe, you would expect to have blood come out. So that means that blood is supposed to travel everywhere in your body, not just your core. But if you had tight hips and you had tight shoulders, how would that impact the blood flow from your heart? Well, it would be restricted, right? So if it causes restriction, where would the blood pool? So I want you to just imagine that your arteries are like rivers. And then there's like a dam where beavers would come and they just throw a bunch of logs there and decide to build a home. What would happen to the flow of water then? On one side, it would start to rise and pool. On the other side, it would be dry. So how does that affect the human body? Well, if the blood is pooling on one side, which is going to be the gut, you're going to have an increased waistline. Now, what happens when you have a decreased flow to your lower body? Well, you're not going to have strong legs. And if you don't have strong legs, you're probably not going to feel motivated to move. And this is why you're going to feel weak with bloating, because there's no oxygen in your legs. And likewise, the same thing happens with your arms and your hands. If your shoulders are tight, how would the blood flow send to your fingertips? And how would that affect the way you work, the way you communicate with people? Sometimes people are just shy because they can't even raise their hands, but it's really that they're bloated. It doesn't have really much to do with their confidence. It's just that they're feeling a lack of confidence because their body isn't feeling energetic. So this is what bloating can do. It can affect so many areas of our life. And this is why it's so important to understand the physical nature of bloating. So let's look at some populations that have bloating. Let's just say you have a job where you're sitting too long. If you're sitting too long, well, your body ends up becoming tighter because it wants to get used to sitting so that it saves energy. But if you get used to sitting, guess what? Your muscles get tight. And then that could be a reason why you have bloating. Another way you can actually gain bloating is having a job where you're standing too long. So even though this is more active and it's harder than sitting, you're still sedentary. And because you're standing for a long period of time, essentially your lower body becomes very, very fixed, and your hips tend to absorb all of the water. And that's why people who stand too long, they have skinny legs, but they have wide hips. People who sit too much, well, because they're relaxed, they're going to have weight everywhere. But it's still not good to have any sort of bloating because your lower body is not responsible for carrying all that weight. It's supposed to release all the weight. Okay, so this can lead to indigestion. It could lead to reduced bloating, which makes you stressed and craving the junk food that ends up causing more bloating. And you're always going to feel like you're hungry. And this is an issue because you're not really active. So this leads you to not having enough fiber in your diet because you don't want to go to the washroom. It prevents you from having drinking water on a regular basis because, again, it's hard to get up. You're always tired. You're always busy. You're working. So you don't want to take those washroom breaks. And these are the things that our minds come up with just so that we can prevent ourselves from using the washroom. And the thing is, if you don't use the washroom, well, guess where all the toxins are sitting? It's going to be sitting in your bowels, in your bladder. It's also going to be sitting in the end of your large intestine, your rectum. So would you rather have toxins sit in your body, or would you rather have it exit you? If you rather have it sit inside your body, well, guess what? That's why you're going to feel very nauseous, right? So this is important to understand that when the food comes in, it's supposed to just take what it needs, which is the good quality energy, and then the rest is supposed to exit you. And that's how you actually lose weight. If you're not moving the blood, then it's going to sit in your body, and then you're going to have bloating, and that's not going to make you feel confident. So what leads to all of this? It's all stress related. And I will come back to physical stress, but mental emotional stress can actually lead to physical stress. So if we look at mental and emotional stress, we're really looking at our hormones. So let's talk about a scenario where you're having some stress at work, you might have some stress at home, and then your mind is just causing you so many issues and you don't want to be thinking so much. So guess what? Isn't it normal for us to crave junk food when we're feeling stressed? The problem with that is, shouldn't we be dealing with the cause of stress to actually fix a problem than rather to just escape the mind with calories? Because we're just creating another problem here. When you start to, let's just say, ignore the actual cause of stress, basically what's happening is that the stimulus is still going to be there. It's always going to ring that bell saying, hey, do this, do this, do this. But if you start creating the, let's just say the outcome of eating food, then what you're doing is you're not getting rid of that stimulus of stress. So it's going to keep coming. And then if you get used to the idea of eating junk food or anything that tastes really great, that's probably not good for your body, it's going to always be there, right? And then now you have two different stimuluses that you got to deal with. And that's probably why most people join this program, is because now they've gained weight and they have another problem to deal with. So we have to really identify the problem, because you already have one problem. Why have another problem? So when it comes to cravings, we have to understand, why do we crave junk food? If we think about food in general, what happens when you put something really delicious into your mouth? The immense flavor and texture of the food creates an immediate distraction. So if you think of people who smoke, they do it for the same reason. Smoking, they know that is bad for them, and it's very obvious that it's really bad for them. But why do they smoke? It's because when they smoke, it creates an immediate distraction. All right, so it prevents them from thinking about the stress, and it makes them feel really good in the moment. However, we have to look at the long-term implications and consequences of these habits. It will lead to bloating because you want to feel full. It leads to toxicity because you're eating foods that have a lot of chemicals in it. And then when you have these feelings, it restricts blood flow. And then when you restrict blood flow, you're going to end up having a lot of long-term health issues. So the thing about bloating is that it creates indigestion, and also indigestion, it causes problems to your breathing mechanics. So the thing that's really important to note here when it comes to fat loss and breathing, the only way to burn fat is through something called beta oxidation. Beta oxidation, it means that you're burning fat cells with oxygen. So the only way to actually lose body fat is to be breathing better. And you have to have improved blood flow so that it can go to the muscle tissues that need those calories. So if you think about the physical restriction from the last slide, if there is a physical restriction caused by bloating, how well can your lungs breathe? Let's take a look at this diagram over here. How your body breathes. So the lungs aren't actually responsible for creating any movement. The lungs are just a passage where the air can be filtered into the body and be used. So it's not the actual lungs that create, again, the movement of the oxygen. There are muscles around our lungs, such as the diaphragm and also the intercostal muscles. These are the muscles that squeeze and open the lung, which creates a change in pressure, which leads to inhalation or exhalation. So let's talk about, how do you breathe in? When the diaphragm contracts downwards, what's happening is that it creates a suction inwards, and that's how you inhale. But it has to be where the diaphragm is pushing down. And then when you breathe out, essentially your diaphragm relaxes, and then it relaxes in an upward fashion such that the air is being pushed out of your body. Now, my question to you is, this looks great on, in theory, but realistically, not a lot of people look like this, where they're fit and they have a free-flowing diaphragm. A lot of people actually have a restriction right by the diaphragm. And what's the reason for that? Well, if we look at the image on the right, see the orange is where the diaphragm is. What's sitting underneath the diaphragm? There's a lot of organs there, such as the stomach, the spleen, the liver, you have the gallbladder, the small intestines, the large intestines, the pancreas is even there, the kidneys. So we have all of our vital organs sitting underneath the diaphragm. Now, if you are bloated over here, let's just say your belly was coming out, it was full of food that was indigested. How would the physical restriction caused by bloating impact the diaphragm? Well, if there's a lot of food in the gut, it's going to be hard for the diaphragm to push down. And if it's hard for it to push down, how much oxygen are you really getting into your body? And if you're not getting that much oxygen in your body, what's your capacity to burn fat? So this is the reason why you need to lose your bloating before you lose your body fat, because again, body fat is only burned with oxygen. The only way you can actually convert those extra fat cells into usable carbohydrates is through breathing. So this is what we call, okay, this is getting a little off topic, but this is what we call gluconeogenesis, where you end up eating the calories inside your body, the body fat, and it converts into a usable sugar that we end up using in exercise. Or even when you're not exercising, called non-exercise activity thermogenesis. Again, you have to use the calories from your body than to be using the calories of your food. And this is the reason why people either see good results or they're not seeing results at all, is because if you have, say, constant cravings, if you're constantly feeling like you're hungry all the time and you can't go beyond your appetite, you can't reduce your mind, you can't reduce your digestion to the point where, you know, you can reduce your calories. Well, you're going to be maintaining your calories all the time. You're going to be someone who's always wanting to eat more food, and then your body has to deal with wanting to lower the blood sugar and converting your cells into fat cells instead of the other way around. Okay, if you want to hear a little bit more in depth, you want to go to the last video, and that's where we talk about intermittent fasting and metabolism. But yeah, that's the idea. The idea is you want to be using the calories that are already inside your body than the ones that you're putting into your body. Okay, so that's how you actually lose weight, breathing better. So what causes bloating? Again, how does mental emotional stress affect the diaphragm? Sorry, let's talk about that. So there are times when, you know, we have a lot of stress that we can't control, either work stress or family stress. Before I get into that, what happens is when you get emotional or mental stress, your breathing immediately gets tighter. It gets harder to breathe. Your body just tightens up and your heart rate starts to race. And what happens is, this is what we call the fight or flight response. Your body wants to either fight, it either wants to run away, it wants to hide. And if you don't make a decision, your body will end up freezing, causing restriction in your body. It's just elevated energy that has to be directed. But if you're not using it, your body ends up squeezing without any sort of movement. So then what happens when you have a restricted blood flow to your arms, your hands, your feet, your legs, and your head? Again, if you can't circulate the blood past the shoulders, the hips, and the neck, well, guess where it's going to pool? It's going to pool by your trunk. But the thing is, gravity causes blood to go down, so it will pool mainly by your lower belly. So this is why we have to manage the stress. Otherwise, you're going to have bloating. Okay, so the thing though is, there are healthier ways of dealing with stress than to consume calories. All right, in order to do this, we must understand how the body behaves. And that's other words, knowing to look at symptoms. And that's what happens when your stress levels are elevated. So again, you have to manage the symptoms than to distract your mind and run away from the problem in itself. So it's the stress that we have to manage. We have to identify the cause of stress. And if the problem is not caused by food, avoid using food as the solution. Okay, so I'm going to say that again, because this is very common. I'm not saying that this is very singular. It's a very specific problem. Everybody does it. Even I do it. Okay, but it's how often you do it. That's the question. Sometimes you need it, but you don't need it all the time. Okay, sometimes your body is actually depleted of energy, and that's when you can start using food. And that's where food is the problem. You're not having enough nourishment, and that's where you can fix the problem with food. But if it's not the problem, which is most cases, you have to identify the stress. So the second thing you have to look at is, once you understand where the stress is coming from, if you don't have direct control over the stress, then you have to manage the physiological symptoms and behavior caused by elevated stress. For example, if you have, let's just say you have a tough boss, or you have a family member you're fighting with. If you know you're not going to have any sort of impact on their behavior, because maybe they're stubborn or maybe they're just that type of person, well, you can either run, right? If you're living at home, move out, but that's probably not an acceptable option for most people. at a job, quit, but that's again, probably not an option for a lot of people. So then those are things you have to accept. Those are things you have to live with. So that's why you have to manage the physiological symptoms and behavior caused by stress, because there's stress everywhere. It's just a matter of, do you want to stay or do you want to go? And that's what we call run, fight, or fight or flight response. So if we're going to manage our symptoms, you have to start with breathing. So you either meditate or exercise. Meditation, it's very simple. You just close your eyes, put some nice music, and just enjoy the song, enjoy the sounds, enjoy just focusing on your breath. And every time your brain goes away from the breath, go back to the breath and just keep going until you start noticing that your body feels lighter. Exercise is another form of meditation. You can go for a walk, jog, or run. Again, you're moving your body, which means you're moving your blood. And also it causes an increased energy expenditure where you're going to start breathing better. And then you're going to want to stretch. Okay, the reason why we end up getting bloating and all this tension is because our bodies are getting tighter. So then what do you do to release that? Well, go for a stretch. And also you can maybe go get a massage, go to the spa, anything that's going to relax your body. That's going to help you alleviate bloating. Okay. So again, going to number two, lowering your body tension. You got to calm down. Okay. I know when you're upset, when you're elevated, someone telling you to calm down can actually make it more stressful, but that's what you actually have to do. That's the reason why people tell you to calm down, is because you're not calm. Okay. But it's funny. We don't like to be told that, but it's true. We have to calm down, because if you don't calm down, you're going to do something out of anger or aggression, right? So during these times when you're elevated in stress, you want to avoid additional strenuous and aggressive activity. And I see all the time, like people in the gym, they go to the gym and, you see them lift very aggressively. And I can tell that they're angry, but it's not the right thing to do, is because you're not paying attention to your body. All you're paying attention to is your hormones, right? And then what you could do is you could actually, because of your adrenaline, because of all of the elevated hormones, you might have higher numbers, but you're not hydrating well. You're not breathing well. You're not stretching the muscle well. And those are other damages that you can create in the future, such as trigger points, muscle cramps. And that can have an impact on your training results, joint injuries. So don't do that. I wouldn't suggest any sort of, aggressive boxing, nothing that's going to, again, cause damage to your body where you're only doing it because you're upset. Do something that's going to actually heal your body. Make that the intention. So when your body gets angry and you're stressed out, your body's going to get a little bit warmer. So you want to bring your body temperature back to neutral. So drink some cool water. Don't drink cold ice water, because that's going to cause too much of a shift. But drink some room temperature or cool water that's going to lower your blood temperature back to, well, in Canada, we have Celsius, so 37 degrees Celsius. What you also want to do, get some sunlight, okay? Sunlight naturally produces this hormone called serotonin. And serotonin is our daytime hormone that makes us feel very, like, just say happy. It's known as the happy hormone. Okay, so happiness gets us out of anger. So make sure you get a lot of sunlight. It also produces a lot of vitamin D, it allows us to utilize the vitamin D, which in turn helps us relax our neck. It also activates the thyroid gland, the parathyroid gland, which is responsible for calcium reabsorption. It makes our bones stronger. Okay, so make sure you get your sunlight again. Another way of relaxing your stress is spending time in your leisure, making sure that you're having fun. Look at your hobbies. If you don't have hobbies, find out the ones that you liked when you were a child and hang out with your friends, invite people to events, do things where you're improving your mood, okay? When I say hang out with your friends, it doesn't mean to vent, okay? You don't want to use your friends as, just people who are there who have to listen to your terrible life, okay? Don't frame yourself in that way, because it makes people, feel really sad for you. It makes people pity you in the long run. And also they're going to remember that, right? Energy is shared, even if it's just your words, you're sharing it through your emotions, and they don't want to remember you as someone. Every time we hang out, this person's always complaining about their whatever. Okay. Don't be that person. Instead, what you want to do, if you actually have to vent, well, speak to a counselor, speak to a psychologist. But this is ways that you can vent, because these people are designed, Their work is designed for them to actually help you articulate these through your thoughts, right? So if you want to vent, talk to a professional about it. Okay, but other than that, improve your energy, improve your mood, hang out with more friends, again, have more fun. And last but not least, food is actually, yes, it's supposed to make you happier. It's supposed to, but at the same time, it's not supposed to poison you. So eat nutritious, low-calorie foods with great flavor and texture if you're using this to manage your stress. Okay, so again, it has to be nutritious, obviously, because you want to heal yourself. And make it low calorie so that you're not worried about having it in abundance. For example, have a really delicious salad. Add some fruits in there, some nuts, some seeds. Okay, make sure that you add some salt, some really tasting oils, and make it colorful, make it fun. Make it so that there's different flavors and textures every time you take a bite. Every time you try different food groups, it's going to give you a different flavor response. That will make your mind shift, and that will take you out of the stress. So make sure everything is elevating your life, not deteriorating your life. Okay, so if we take a look at bloating, it's really not about how to lose weight. If you look at your goals, it's not so much about how to lose weight. As long as you're happy and you're moving, which is what happens when you're happy, you're naturally going to lose weight. Okay, so it's supposed to happen. You're supposed to be someone who's losing weight all the time because your body doesn't like being heavy. It doesn't like being sedentary. Your body likes feeling confident and it likes feeling free. So just know that even if your mind doesn't think it's possible, it's what your body wants. Your body wants you to be a lean person. It wants you to be a flexible person. It wants you to be a person who has a lot of endurance, a lot of strength, right? A lot of confidence. It wants you to have that. So what we are really concerned about is what is actually causing us to gain weight. So let's take a look at what causes us to gain weight. Let's look at the food groups over here. Okay, you take someone who is eating a lot of fruits and vegetables and foods that come from the ground. Well, most of it's actually coming from water. So it's not going to be as dense. A lot of it has fiber in it, which means that it's pretty much indigestible. So it's going to exit our body and all we're left with is the nutrition. And that's why a lot of people who have the majority of fruits and vegetables and lean proteins in their diet, they're going to have these sort of bodies. But you take a person who always falls to their cravings, no matter what the stress levels are, they make the choice that they want to have these foods to escape from their problems. Well, look how dense they are. And they don't really move along the bloodstream very well because it's so viscous. Also, most of it's not really food. It's coming from chemicals to preserve the shelf life. So the body is dealing with a lot of toxins. There's a lot of inflammation going on. In order to reduce your inflammation, your body ends up expanding and starts absorbing a lot more water. And that's the reason why we have these sort of bodies. So again, it's not so much about how to lose weight. We got to look at why we're gaining weight. So let's take a look at calorie density for a second. This is what 500 calories look like. Okay, if you look at oil, there's 9 calories per gram. If we look at meat and fried protein and also carbohydrates, there are 4 calories per gram. So that being said, if you have a lot of greasy foods, fried foods, even if you have just a little bit of fried foods, well, it's going to pack on a lot of calories. See how 500 calories only takes up about 1/8 of your stomach. Now you take cheese, again, most of cheese is fat. So takes up about 1/6 of your stomach. Meat, well, depends on what kind of meat you have, but meat generally has fat, especially if it's good quality meat. So with meat, you're going to have a lot of dense food. Meat is typically heavier too. So it's going to be denser in calories, even if, protein and carbs have the same amount of calories per gram. Well, meat just weighs heavier. It is denser. So that's why it's going to be a little heavier on the calorie side. Potatoes, beans, and rice, these are your denser carbohydrates. These are your complex carbs. So these also have a lot of density to it compared to vegetables. So that's why we have to pay very close attention to how much potatoes, beans, and rice are we eating. Because yes, it provides us with a lot of energy. But at the same time, it's like do you really need that energy? Are you going to be physically using that energy, or are we just going to store it? That's the reason why we gain weight. Are you going to use it, or are you going to store it? Okay, last but not least, again, we're going back to fruits and veggies. As you can see, 500 calories of fruits and veggies almost takes up your whole stomach, while oil barely takes up that fraction. So one of the reasons why we're constantly hungry is because you're eating foods that are they're not taking up so much space in your stomach. Okay, so you want to feel satisfied. That's the main reason why we stop eating. You feel satisfied, you're content. Okay, when you're content, you don't need to eat anymore. And that's coming from that stomach stretch. If you eat a small smidge of food, but it has a lot of calories, well, because it's not taking much space in your body, your stomach is still squeezing hard, and you're actually going to end up getting even more hungry. So again, you want to have foods that take up a lot more space in your body that are good for you, and they will also satisfy your hunger. So that's also the reason why you don't want to be drinking a lot of your calories. You don't want to be having foods that take up the same amount of space, but end up having so much more calories. So if you take a can of Coke and you take a glass of water, if they both have about 8 ounces, well, the volume is 8 ounces. So it's going to take up the same space in your stomach, but which one has more calories? It's going to come from the can of Coke. The same thing happens when you drink a Red Bull, you take a lot of stimulants. It's going to come with an added effect into your body. So that's why you want to pay attention to calorie density. Okay. So if you're having troubles with gaining weight, well, don't drink your calories. So this is the reason why you need to reduce your bloating in order for you to lose fat. Having the physical ability to send blood to your extremities, that's the secret. That's the secret to fat loss, because blood has to be somewhere. We have about 5 liters of blood in the bloodstream at all times, but we have roughly, we can circulate anywhere from 25 to 50 liters. Excuse me. We can circulate up to 25 liters of blood with elevated activity. But we have a lot of blood in our body. I'm not going to give you the exact number because I forgot, but the idea is blood is always in our body, and we're always producing blood, and we're always getting rid of blood. The way we produce blood is through the spleen and other parts of our body, such as our bone, our heart. But the way we get rid of blood is through our urine, our sweat. So our body is constantly regulating blood. Okay, but the thing is, if you use your muscle groups, the blood is going to want to go there more. Okay, so blood in your muscles, not only do they activate and tone them, they also reduce your potential for gut bloating. And this is the cool thing about muscle. Muscle tissue is metabolically more active, and it burns more calories at rest than fat tissue. So if you think about muscle actually depletes your stored carbohydrates. This is also known as glycogen. It also reduces your blood sugar. That's why when you exercise, sometimes you could feel dizzy if you go too hard. And in the long run, if you exercise over time, you will burn your body fat because your body is constantly trying to manage your blood sugar. So this reduces the risk of calorie flooding. When I say calorie flooding, that's saying that you have all these calories that are inside your blood that aren't being used. So when you start using those calories, well, you actually are depleted of the energy, and then it gives reason for your body to digest the calories properly and transfer it somewhere where it's being used, which is the muscle groups. Also, an added bonus is when you have more muscle, this is going to elevate your resting metabolism, meaning that you're going to be burning more calories while doing nothing. So that is the end of this presentation. I hope that you, let's just say, watch this over and over and really, really give your body a chance to manage your hunger. Because again, a lot of people feel hungry because they're stressed out about something, but they're not really hungry. It's because of the stress in itself that induced the hunger. So it's really the stress that you have to deal with. It's not so much the hunger. The hunger is just the reaction that we have. So as long as you remember that, you will be on track and you will have a consistent weight loss where you're not falling off track all the time. If you're falling off track, it's because you're falling into the hunger, right? So just know that there's going to be a point in time where you're going to fall, and that's going to be okay. But it's just a matter of getting back on track and continuing with the journey. So just enjoy the process, and don't feel so bad when you fall. Just get back up and start moving again. Okay, so have a great day.